what?
Next week.
He said the latkes.
Okay.
No, latkes.
Just remember Judah Maccabee.
That's right.
That whole New World. He might have seen a sufganiyah, maybe. Right, that's possible. Dough fried, it's possible. But a potatoes, they were in South America. They didn't exist in Israel until 500 years ago. We didn't have potatoes, and now a potato is like the center of our world.
Well, it was the center of the European world.
When it came, absolutely.
Those Jews came over here, and that's it.
If you want to know one of the least, sorry, this is off topic, but if you want to know one of the least valued but most important changes in human society, it's called the potato. If you want to understand why Europe shot ahead, wheat was earlier and was a major change, but the plow was more important than wheat by itself. But the potato changed just at the moment that Europe needed the relationship between the average person and how much ground they needed to support themselves. The potato made the Industrial Revolution possible. Without it, we might not have had the Industrial Revolution. So
because if without potato, you will not have enough Irish people working in the factories. So nothing will happen. That's a logic.
Part of it, and it's part of it, the amount of calories and nutrients per acre. And the amount and the type of land that you could grow it on allowed more people to survive on less land under cultivation, which means you needed fewer people, which meant they now needed other jobs. And look, we've got this lovely factory for you. And that was the beginning, right? That changed everything. So the potato, without the potato, it would have been much slower, much harder to go, which is one of the reasons, at least some of the studies I've read, why the Industrial Revolution took off in Europe, even though the same ideas had also occurred in other parts of the world earlier. They had the potato.
They could eat.
And now we have the latkes.
And now we have the latkes. It's a miracle. Okay.
That's it. That's a miracle.
It's amazing that business ever happens. Because I hope you've been getting a feel for the problems of fraud and of trust and of what happens, what it takes to make a society that can have commercial transactions, because this is a major problem. Remember, prior to the invention of money, prior to the invention of a system of trust and of ways of reconciling what was fair and unfair in the minds of all the participants, if I thought you cheated me, I came back with my club and hit you in the head, and then we began a blood feud that would totally tear apart our village, or I would just take it and resent you forever, which started feuds that would tear apart the trust within a village. Or I just wouldn't trade with you again, which would start feuds that would tear apart a village. But if you have a system of laws, if you have a system of fairness that people are willing to say, yes, if it's this, I'm okay with it. It's acceptable. I know that everyone is playing by the same rules. I know that there is fairness, and I accept the authority coming from a higher level, God in this case, than just the most powerful guy in the town, who would use that to his own advantage rather than the rest of ours advantage. Knowing what is fair and unfair is incredibly important for a society. It always makes me a little sad that our own society has become so litigious and so complicated that many people make up their own interpretation of what's fair. And as soon as people begin to do that, to go back to our lunch and learn class, as soon as people are picking and choosing for themselves what is fair or unfair, we call that idol worship. You have your own standard, and it falls apart because everyone's going to say it's fair if it benefits me, and it's unfair if it doesn't benefit me. Like any 3-year-old will tell you, right? It's fair as long as I'm happy with the outcome, and that's not really what the definition of fair should be. Jastrow, yeah.
That's the dictionary.
But he wrote the Jastrow. I mean, he didn't write a dictionary of terms. He wrote a dictionary of Aramaic.
Yeah, dictionary of Aramaic.
Yes.
You can also. I had a dictionary of Jastrow.
But that's not with an R.
I was going to say, where's the R?
Well, Jastrow. I mean, there is an R in it.
Yeah, R. Jastrow.
Okay, we'll talk about Aramaic later. Right. Gentlemen, do your shopping later. Out of the shops. So we are on Mishnah 4:4, and we are going to begin to do a little bit more about fraud. What really we're going to deal with for the rest of chapter 4 is various types of fraud. So Mishnah 4:4, everybody sees it. It begins with the phrase, both the buyer and the seller to hand out new packets because our other packets disappeared, which really bothers me because those were the entire Bava Metzia, and I really don't want to have to reprint the whole thing.
Maybe more people wanted to study at home.
Someone took it home, I guess. I think someone just tidied up and didn't check.
Didn't realize.
Yeah, so 4-4, both the buyer and the seller is what we're starting with.
Buyer and the seller are subject to the law of fraud.
All right, major concept here and different than American law. All right, so what's the difference here? Under American law, I go to the little old lady who has her husband's car that's in the barn and it's under the tarp, and he only drove it like, every couple months, but he really loved it, but he died, and so she wants to get rid of it. And she thinks that he paid like $500 for it or something. And she pulls off the cover, and it's a beautiful 1965 Corvette. And she's asking $500 for it.
Where is it?
Oh.
What?
Where is it?
Yeah, where is it?
Where is
And
it?
so immediately you write a check, you hand the check over, you drive off, and you're like, yes, yes, until you read your Mishnah. And who is responsible for it being a fair transaction too? Not only the seller. Right? So if she were trying to sell a car and pretended that it was something that it wasn't, everybody goes, oh man, terrible buyers or terrible sellers, always trying to cheat you and lying and all of that. And yeah, throw the book at her, right? But if you score a good deal, if you get a car that's well undervalued because the buyer doesn't, or the seller doesn't know any better, or you're in the flea market and you pick something up where the seller doesn't know any better, that is not permissible. That's not kosher. Exactly. Right? You have committed fraud. You have committed on. Are we looking for the phrase?
No, didn't we read somewhere earlier that it had, the final price had to be within a certain range?
Yeah, that's what fraud means, right? That's more than a sixth. And I was sort of anticipating that a cherry Corvette would probably be more than a sixth more than $500. Maybe a little bit more even, or maybe a lot more. But yes, so when we say fraud, we mean we're outside of that 1/6 window of range. So you can bargain them down to less than a sixth of the fair value, and they can bargain you up to more than to a sixth, more than a sixth. Thank you. That's easier to say. Up to about 18% above fair value. But once you go beyond that, both buyer and seller are responsible for having defrauded the other person. And we're going to see there are certain things where this doesn't apply. There are some things you can buy where sky is the limit and ground is the floor for the pricing. But this is for most things. This is the general rule. Okay. So.
Number two, just as the ordinary person is subject to the law of fraud, so too is the merchant.
Okay, keep reading.
Rabbi Judah said the law of fraud does not apply to the merchant.
All right, so what are we talking about here? This is not meaning that a merchant is okay to defraud people. This means, as we've talked about before, that generally speaking, you were allowed to challenge the price you had already paid to check it and tell you. This is saying, the argument here is, does everybody, including merchants, also have that backup? Or do we assume that merchants know their business? And therefore, if a merchant agrees to pay X, he knows that that's what the price should be. And if he's wrong, well, too bad. He's a merchant. He should have known better.
Well, if he's the merchant, isn't he the seller? By definition, the merchant?
Well, the merchant could be buying. Right? I'm selling olive oil to somebody, and the olive oil merchant shows up, and he says, "I'll give you, 100 dinarim for this."
So if someone was a businessman goes shopping someone else's business, he's more responsible even.
Oh no, only for
regular buyer.
the general principle would only be in this argument for the things that they are a merchant of. Right. So if you are a horse trader and you want to go buy olive oil, you don't get. Right. Even Rabbi Yehuda wouldn't say that the merchant doesn't have to worry about fraud. But within your business, any takebacks, no do-overs. That's your job, and you are the expert. Therefore, you get no protection. And the rest of the sages, they say no, you get protection. If you cheat a merchant, you have still cheated someone, and therefore that merchant is allowed to seek redress. If they are able to figure out that they were cheated. Make sense? Okay. And then 3?
He who has been subjected to fraud has the upper hand. If he wants, he may say to him, give me back my money or give me back the amount you defrauded me.
All right, so the 2 options here are give me back what I paid you, right? And I'll give you back what you sold me, and we're done. Everything, now that I've realized that this was an inappropriate price. Or they can say, just give me back the difference, right? So you defrauded me by 20%, but you were only allowed to talk me up to 18%. That 2% difference, I expect that back. Right? And once you give me that back, then we're square. I'll keep my product, you keep my money with the 18% that you got up to the top of the limit, and everybody's cool.
I disagree with that position because I will not trust the person. Someone that make me fraud, okay, and charge me over, I don't want to do more deal business with him. Give me the money, that's it. I don't want to do the difference.
But whose choice is it? Right? That's the point here, right? The person who was frauded, who was defrauded, has the choice. So if you say, hey, man, you charged me 20% and it should have only been 18%, just, I don't want to trust you, I don't want to do any business with you, give me my money, we're done. That's fine, that's your choice.
So it's the choice of, it's a choice for, okay.
Yeah, it's the choice of the person who was defrauded, right? So if the seller comes to your house and says, hey, you bought that from me, that Corvette, and I just went online because $dollars you gave me, and I discovered that was worth $20,000. Either pay me $19,500 or whatever the 18% would be, or give me back the car, $500. That's their choice, and you have to go with whatever they decide. And again, this is with the court having already validated that the price was fraudulent, and therefore the sale is in flux. It can be reversed because of the fraud. Make sense?
Yes.
Maybe? Okay. Onward.
Mishnah 5.
Indeed.
How much may be missing from a selah and still not fall within the rule of fraud?
Okay. In the ancient world. Welcome to another topic. Every topic is like a little history lesson. All right, so coins in the ancient world, and really in the modern world all the way up until very recently, were printed from metals that had value. Right? You had silver coins and you had gold coins, and some parts of the world you had copper, and the value of the currency was the value of the metal. And that was its value. The idea that you would have a piece of paper that was symbolic of value, it's a very recent invention, one that we helped begin way back in the Middle Ages, but that's another story. But in the ancient world, that meant that if there was any degradation of the physical coin, that some of the value of that coin potentially had been lost. Now, they already had enough of a concept of currency, as opposed to, I'm using this as a commodity, to recognize that you couldn't constantly weigh this thing down to the gram to know exactly how much had been rubbed off or how much had been, which was a bigger problem, clipped, which was when people would scrape off parts of the coin and then remelt it and use it for their own purposes. You couldn't keep track of it down to the exact micro ounce. But they also knew that unscrupulous people would deliberately try to use their old worn coins with the face of whoever was on it almost completely smushed off. People would try to use those because those coins weren't technically the full value of the metal that originally was of that size. Does that make sense? All right, so your old gold coin is not actually worth, in the material sense, what a new gold coin is. And the question becomes, how much does the coin have to degrade before that's not currency anymore at its face value? Right? At what point, when it's lost a certain amount of its literal material value, does it cease also functioning as the face value of that coin? It's a very interesting economic question.
We destroy dollar bills when they get worn, or if it's torn in half, it's the same thing.
Exactly. So, I mean, one of the things that we've solved in the modern world is by completely disconnecting the material value of the coin or paper from the actual value that it's used in for transactions, is we don't care whether your penny's old and dirty or smushed or half chipped or what, as long as it is still acceptable by a bank under American law, go for it. It's like dollar bills, I think something along the lines of, it's like as long as you can see the serial number, it's still considered valid or something. Is it 3/4 of it? Yeah, it's like,
Because otherwise you could rip it in half and get $1 for this half and $1 for this half.
what a great business plan.
Wow.
Yes.
So it's 3/4 of the bill.
But there you go. I mean, 25% of the bill could be missing, and it's still worth $1. And that's not because the dollar paper is worth $1. It's just we've agreed that that's what it needs to be. They were halfway in between that because they didn't have the notion of free-floating currency that wasn't tied to a particular material value, but they also knew they couldn't treat coins like you treat beans, which was, the precise amount is the precise value. Because otherwise you'd be weighing every single coin and every single transaction. So they needed to find a rule of how do you decide when too little of the coin is left to still count as the face value. Make sense? Now that everyone understands the problem, let's solve it.
Rabbi Meir says, 4 isarin, 1 isar per dinar.
All right, perfectly clear, right? This is where the explanation notes at the bottom come in really, really handy, because it's like pounds, shillings, and pence in Britain, and a bob and a farthing and all. It's just crazy money talk. But that's the way they used to do the transactions. But if you look down at the commentary at the bottom, what he's basically talking about is that there has to be 1/24th. If 1/24th of the material of the coin is gone, and you use that coin for a purchase as its full face value, then you have committed fraud. Make sense? Right, 1/24th, which is not a lot. Right, that's not a lot missing out of this thing. I mean, that's a tiny amount by most measures. However, Rabbi Yehuda has a different opinion. What a surprise.
Rabbi Yehuda holds that a ratio of 1/12 constitutes fraud.
Well spoken. A good translation there. Right, he gives the precise coinage ratio, but what he's talking about is 1/12. Now, what's interesting about these measures? What was the original measure we had for fraud? 1/6, right? So the first two opinions here, right, Meir and Judah, are both a little bit more cautious about coins losing their value than they are about commodities losing their value, or clothing or other things. So they're each being stricter with the value of the coin, which makes some sense. I mean, the value of the currency and the people's trust in the value of the currency has been a major issue throughout human history as soon as we invented currency. Because people quickly realized, well, wait a minute, if I sort of hollow it out and I replace it with a different metal, then I can keep that metal. If I scrape off the edges, as I mentioned, what they call clipping the coin clipping, then I can gain some of that value and people won't be able to tell the difference visually. So there have been lots of ways that people have tried to cheat with currency. It's supposed to represent an idealized value, even if its physical form isn't. But these first two rabbis are very cautious, more cautious here than they are with other things. Yes?
Totally off topic.
So what else is new with our conversations?
Using percentages of 100 or 10 and 10. Where is this 12 and 6?
There was no decimal. They only have fractions. There was no decimal. That wasn't invented yet. I know, like, they had no decimal.
They had no numbers.
Well, of course they had numbers, and they knew that a certain number of these made up one of those. The same way that 12 months make up 1 year and 60 minutes make up 1 hour. Why don't we have decimal time? Why isn't our calendar a decimal? It's because that was the system that was already in place, and that's the system that we're going forward with. And we've changed a lot of things. Like I said, we've moved away from the whole British system, which had the farthing and pence and shillings and the bob and the all of these other things and the hay pennies. And we moved away from that confusing system, which was equally hard on the brain of trying to work out. I think it was like 240 pennies to the pound, I think was the ratio, and I'm probably wrong, and any British viewers will correct me. We moved away from that because we saw a simpler way by going to the decimal. They didn't have that luxury. So they went with the currency convention of the age. And this is how you then represented percentages of value. You represented it by fractions. And that was all they had.
Now, 1/12 is a lot. Because think about if I was living there, I would take a lot of coin. I would take 1/12 for each. Still, you have the coin and you have a lot of material, raw material to create something like that.
Yeah, for every 12
No, but you
coins,
always have
for every 12 coins, you could have an extra coin. Right? It's a 12% profit.
thinking. No, but it's
Here we have to protect ourselves against yes. You don't
Well,
cheat.
so that's the tension, though, because the alternative is every single coin has to be visually and meticulously weighed in order to measure its worth. And every single transaction then is going to involve pulling out a very precise scale. But if I'm just buying some oranges from you, do I really expect you to have the skill and the equipment to measure down to that level, to measure down to 1/24 or 1/12 of the actual weight? Remember, especially when we're talking about gold and silver, these were not giant, half-ounce coins. These were tiny, tiny coins because it was valuable. I remember reading somewhere that if you had like a chest full of gold coins just that big, that was a king's treasury of value. That gold was that valuable, and so you didn't need a lot of them, and that meant they were small. Which how could you tell 1/12, 1/24 of this just by feeling it in your hand? Well, you're going to have to break out the very precise scales, and then there's going to be an argument about whether your weights are fair and my weights are fair and calibrated. And, I only wanted to buy an orange. And thus we see how trying to have an easy and reliable and trustworthy system of value is very important to having a functioning economy. Because otherwise you're basically bartering with gold rather than using it as money. And that was one of the things that held up a lot of societies, was they didn't trust the value of the currency, they trusted the value of the metal. And that meant that they really were bartering with the metal rather than using it as money. And what we have here is a very rudimentary way of saying money. And even though some of the value has been lost, we're going to still treat it as money. Because that way it's just so much easier. And the great thing is, and I know that if I pay you with a coin that is not fraudulent, but still is less than the original, you can turn around and buy something with someone else to you, right? You didn't lose anything. I didn't lose anything, because that coin is going to be circulated and is fair and everyone will accept it. So who cares whether it's a little bit lighter than not? It's only when it's a lot lighter, that means that many people won't accept it. That's when we have a problem, because now you've stuck me with a coin that I can't spend anywhere else. And that's what we're looking for, is what's the threshold for sticking me with the dirty coin that no one else will take? And that's where we get to Rabbi Shimon, who actually is the final word on the topic.
And Rabbi Shimon said that a ratio of 1/6 constitutes fraud, which is the same as regular fraud, as we learned in the previous Mishnah.
He says, no, it's 1/6, just like we learned before. Like when you're buying oranges or when you're buying a horse, it's 1/6. And if your coin is within that 18% of what the original weight of the coin was, it's fair, and the next guy is fair, and you can keep using it in the marketplace, and no one's going to question it. So it's good enough to be representative of value because it's accepted by everyone as value, which is how we eventually ended up with paper money.
Right.
Is people accept value regardless of the intrinsic worth of the object that we call valuable. Same thing holds true for fancy art.
So 1/6 was the accepted value because it's the same logic as the previous one.
Right, and I think there's also some pragmatics here. Is that even though people freak out about gold and such, it's like, well, why would the gold in my coin be subject to a different fraud than buying a gold bar? Right? If I buy gold as a commodity, I'm going to be subject to a 1/6 ona'ah for fraud. And if he's within that 1/6 margin, when we barter over how much I'm going to pay for that gold bar, because maybe I'm a jeweler and I want to make jewelry, then why would I subject my coins to a stricter value? And we know it's because people get nuts about money. They always have, and they probably always will. But the rabbis are saying, cool it. 1/6 is good enough for it as a commodity. It should be good enough for it as a currency, and let's get back to business.
Interesting that Rabbi Shimon didn't say 1/80.
You would have preferred?
It's in the middle between both.
But he didn't want to go to both. He wanted to go back to the normal measure.
Yeah, regular measure.
But mathematically because I can't compromise.
You always want the compromise.
Yeah.
Sometimes both the other positions are wrong, is further along than where they stuck, right? So he's not saying that Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda both had a point. He said both of you are wrong. You're both too strict, right? The way that the economy is going to work, the way that we're going to be honest, and the way we're going to be fair and trust each other, 1/6. Burma shave. Move on.
Makes sense.
Occasionally it does. All right, Mishnah 6. We're still talking about coins.
Until when may he that is defrauded return the coin?
Right, so this is reviewing. We already talked about when you have defrauded movable objects, but what about when it's the currency itself that you get home and you look at it and go, wait a minute. How about you compare it to maybe some of your other coins, and it's like, this thing is tiny, what's going on? How long do you have before you're stuck with it?
What is the definition of big city here?
20 people.
What's that? 20, a million.
More than your family.
No, the cities were classified as big or small by the authorities. It wasn't just, like. So just like nowadays where you have incorporated and unincorporated towns, there was a standard for what was considered large or not large. But it was established by the authority, not just by your feeling.
Well, that way everyone can agree, I suppose. The authority said, look, this is.
This classified as a large town, we're
Right.
done. And again, sharing standards, rather important for having a real society as opposed to just anarchy.
In large towns, how long can he wait till he's to return the coin? In large towns, until he has had time to show it to a money changer.
Right, so if you be a little suspicious about your coin, well, you're in a large town, there's got to be a money changer somewhere. And so you'll go to the money changer and you'll say, hey, is this legit? And he's going to say, oh, no, man, that's like half the size of what it should be. And you're going to go back to the guy, or more likely to the court, and say, this guy gave me this coin, blah, 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 blah. And then now we've got a court case.
And what we say basically is, you can't wait 2 weeks. If you're in a large town, their money changes.
We're going
A day or
to
two.
we're going to get to the 2 weeks in just a second.
Oh, okay, so I would say a day or two would
Yep.
be reasonable. Okay. Well, in villages, he has until the Sabbath Eve.
Right, so after Shabbat, no. But until Shabbat, I know you're thinking, what's if
But
it's
the same if it's come on Thursday or Monday? That's a big difference of days.
right? Well,
No,
Monday and
but I
Thursday
don't-
were the market days.
What I
yes.
don't want him to do is wait 3 weeks until he's worn off more of the coin, and then say he's defrauded, and there's even less of
Right.
it. I
So
want to be the coin that he got, not a worn out coin that has even less value.
Days.
Yeah, the more days, the more chance of that.
So that's the idea, that until Shabbat, even if you're in a village, you'd have a chance to walk to a larger town and back to check the coin. And remember, coin transactions were not happening constantly for most people. People were just beginning to get more and more into the currency type life. But most people, they didn't go and buy very much. They made their own, they would barter for their own, they would grow their own.
Right.
And occasionally they'd buy things.
But if you did the transaction on Friday morning, like buying the chicken for the Shabbat dinner, okay, you don't have enough time to do anything. Like you don't have enough time to check, because in Shabbat you don't touch money.
Right.
So after every Shabbat, okay, bye, you don't have any opportunity.
We're going to come back to
So
that in a
it's-
second, but the opportunity, the redress. But you also have to imagine you're buying a chicken, you're not using gold denarii, right? Unless it's like the fanciest chicken ever. And so the amount you might be losing, as long as the coin looks reasonable, you're probably okay. So there is a certain amount of, some copper coin, it's a pruta, it's barely worth anything. Even if he defrauded me by 18% or 20%, all I've lost is 20% of a penny, which big deal.
No, but what I say that I have a problem with the argument of village until the eve of the Shabbat
Mhm.
instead of many days, because eve of Shabbat is related to when you close the transaction. If the transaction is very close to Shabbat, you don't have a lot of opportunities.
And so you tell the person,
no matter the amount.
right? So you tell the person, I can't buy it right now. After Shabbat, so Yom Rishon. Motzei Shabbat, we'll do business.
But on Thursday or Wednesday. And
But it's not going to
say
check
that-
it.
It's not the same that for Sunday you have a whole week to check. Wednesday you have already half week, 2 days. That's what I say. That
So
I have a problem with the argument of Eve of Shabbat. It's
okay. So hold on a second.
It doesn't
Let's
give you flexibility.
let's read the next section, and then we'll come back to this question about trust, which is really what the question is about.
If he that had given the coin recognized it, even after 12 months, he should accept it in return.
All right. So there's your cushion, which is you gave me this dinar last October, and I just realized it's underweight. Change it for me. The person should say, oh, right, yeah, I remember that coin. Again, we're not talking about people having a wallet full of dollar bills and they're memorizing serial numbers. These are coins that people would have had few of them, and valuable ones they would have known, and they would have known many of them by sight. This is the one that had the half stamp on this way. This is the one that was, with the year on the back of it that said this. This is the one that the pomegranate was falling off. I mean, you would know your coins because they were valuable to you. You should, even up to a year, take the coin back in exchange. However,
but if he does not accept it, the one who received it only has a cause for complaint against him.
which basically means
Court,
what?
to go to court.
No, this is not a claim. This is a complaint. You can gripe. You can kvetch. You can tell everybody that this guy wouldn't take the coin back even though it was underweight. That's it.
So you lost.
You've lost. Yeah. There are the minimums, right? The same day for a money changer, or the time for the money changer, or Shabbat Eve, which is supposed to be time for a money changer. And if the guy won't take it back later, even though he should, then, but you can complain all you like. I mean, as if you could stop Jews from complaining. But what good, right? What good would be complaint?
Small community,
Exactly.
everybody will know about it, and then this person that did this is going to lose business.
Remember you said earlier, Natan, you said earlier, I don't want to do business with someone. If they cheated me, I just want my money back. I don't want to do business. Exactly right. And it's the trust within the community that is the ultimate barrier. Yes, you have the courts for the most difficult cases. But for most cases, people want to be trusted, and they want to trust each other because that's the only way things will work smoothly. And this is basically setting up a system of trust with a safety net, that just in case, here's the minimum that we will force it to happen. But really, reputation and honesty and trust, that should be the driving motivation for making this all work, because it's to everybody's benefit. Everybody cheats, everybody loses. And they've done that in many game theory simulations. If you set up an economy where people cheat a lot and everyone knows that everybody cheats, the amount of growth within that economy is stunted. And if you set up a simulation where people are honest and know that everyone else is honest, the amount of growth that you can produce is just amazing. Because people are willing to do more if they know that they are protected by the honesty of other people, not just by the laws. And people are willing to take advantage, to be polite, of each other if they think they can get away with it, and especially if they think everyone else is doing it. And then that's one of those things where we call social capital. When you build up a sense of we're on the same page, we're in the same boat, you're looking out for me, I'm looking out for you, at least to a minimum standard. That is an incredible gift to any society or community. It's something that allows the society to surge ahead, no matter what its resources are, no matter what its educational levels are. It's that feeling of we are together, and therefore we can work together without all of this litigious stuff. It's a godsend to a community. Okay.
So this explains the stock market going to 20,000.
A little bit.
Yes.
A little bit, yes. Stock markets are an interesting creature.
Interesting.
Yes.
But I remember going back to college when studying underdeveloped countries,
Mhm.
and how much money do you put in, where do you put it, and things like that. And one of the common elements in terms of success, which no one ever bothered with, was what does the legal system look like?
Absolutely. They bother with it now.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a major subject to study in political science and political economy.
there's no legal system or trust,
Right.
stability, then putting money into it's worthless.
Right. What are the rates of corruption? What does it take in terms of bribes? It's like you can say, oh well, I'll say I have to bribe a few officials to get my building permit for my project. You may think that's an acceptable cost, but the thing is, it exposes the underlying corruption in the community, which means you will be incurring other costs, not just bribery, but loss of business because you can't depend upon the people or can't trust them to fulfill contracts. That is going to exponentially hurt and harm your business enterprise. So yeah, the fact that people are honest and trustworthy, or at least felt to be honest and trustworthy by each other, makes a huge difference. Would you say?
No, your example, I remember from I have a kibbutz and two brothers from Russia, from Siberia, and they went to study in Minnesota, okay, in an American university, and it was at the time of at the end of the Soviet Union that everyone said in America, oh yeah, let's give a lot of money to the Russia to support and everything, and both of them they say no, don't give because they are very corrupt and all your money will disappear.
That's right.
And that actually they were right.
Right. Well, I mean, we only have to look at the last 30, 40 years of the Palestinian Authority. The average Palestinian has received something like $1 million worth of global aid from all the other countries and organizations. The average Palestinian has not seen $1 million worth of aid. And that's very unfortunate, because had it been put to good use rather than to secret bank accounts, it would have totally transformed their ability to have a vibrant and self-sustaining economy at this point. But both for internal and external reasons, that is not what happened. Okay.
And it is permitted to use it for redeeming the second tithe without concern. For he who would not receive it is but only a cheapskate.
All right, so second tithe are fruits and produce that you need to eat in Jerusalem. Obviously, for many people, schlepping it to Jerusalem is hard. To cash, you then take the cash to Jerusalem and you buy things in Jerusalem, and then you eat the stuff you bought there. So that's what they mean by redeeming it. And the concern here is, I already know that this coin is undervalued, but I need to redeem my tithe. Can I redeem it with this coin, or am I cheating God when I do that? And the answer they give is, it's okay, right? And when you get to Jerusalem and you say, I need to buy this much worth of food because of the second tithe, the shopkeeper should take the money from you and help you fulfill the mitzvah. And if he doesn't, shame on him. He's a cheapskate. But it's okay. God will give you full value on that coin. All right. Now we're going to kind of have a little digression. Like I said, nothing else is new. As long as you've been talking about these numbers and fractions, we're going to talk about them a bit more, but not directly, well, not exclusively within the issue of fraud. So just to prepare you, this is going to be sort of a side box in the discussion. You okay to keep reading?
Yes. Fraud is 4 pieces of silver.
Right, which means that there had to be that 1/6 over the seller that makes it fraud. So it's just restating what we already know. Right, but we're doing a little math mnemonic, right? Fraud is 4. Think of it like that. You're studying for the test. Fraud is 4.
A claim is a minimum of 2 pieces of silver.
Okay, and go ahead and do the.
An admission is a minimum of that which is worth a peruta.
Right, so the pruta was like the smallest measurable increment of value. Think of it like a penny in the modern sense. So if it's less than a penny, it's basically worthless. You'd have to buy a bunch of them to make a penny. It's basically worthless by itself. Tinfoil, a tiny little piece of tinfoil on the ground. So a claim, as you can see from the explanation below, good review there, is that in order to make a claim, you have to at least admit that it is worth the 2 pieces of silver, that is what the subject that you're arguing about is. And an admission has to be at least that you are admitting to a pruta's worth of what you owe, of the value. Right, so again, those are not terribly new or on topic. And now we're going to get 5 more things, since we mentioned the pruta, that get ruled by the pruta.
So 5 rules involving that which is worth a peruta. An admission is a minimum of that which is worth a peruta.
Which we just said.
A woman can be betrothed with that which is worth a peruta.
So if you've ever complained about your wedding ring being not worth enough, it could have been worth less, right? Even a penny plastic ring, if it was worth a penny by itself, absolutely say, hooray, behold, I consecrate you to me with this. And if she accepts it, that's a valid wedding. Now, that's the good point. Yes, if she doesn't accept it, then yeah, you're still single. But it is technically permissible and a valid betrothal. The issue here was if you offer her, some dirt off the ground, behold, you're consecrated to me. Look, I made you a dirt clod. No, that even if she says yes and accepts it, the court says, no, you don't. That is not a valid betrothal. There has to be something of value being traded in this, traded is the wrong word, being given and received in this encounter for it to be an actual betrothal. Otherwise, you're just saying words and throwing dirt. Onward.
Someone who benefits a peruta's worth from that which belongs to the sanctuary has committed sacrilege.
All right, so sacrilege is a technical term, me'ila, which means that you have wrongly used that which is consecrated. That you have a sheep and you say, I'm going to use this sheep for a sacrifice next week. And then tomorrow you come back and you go, but the only sheep I've got available is that one. God won't mind. And you slaughter it and you eat it. And you might as well have taken it from the altar in Jerusalem right then and there. Right? If you use something that has been consecrated, that has been dedicated for the sanctuary.
So that's me'ila.
That's me'ila. That's what they're using for the term sacrilege here. Right? Then you have committed a particular type of transgression. It's not just a generic, you broke your vow. It's you are stealing from God in like the most literal sense possible.
And it doesn't have to be killing the whole sheep if you just shear it.
If you were to
more than a peruta.
Exactly right. If you shear more than a peruta, you are still this sin. Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't have to be the whole sheep. Or sometimes people would dedicate, like I consecrate the value of this vase to the thing, and then you're waiting to get it assessed, and then you're going to donate that value. In the meantime, you can't use that for any other purpose, and you certainly can't benefit from it more than a peruta's worth in the meantime. Onward.
Okay. One who finds that which is worth a peruta must proclaim it as a lost object.
Which is what we've talked about before. This is why when you're walking down the street and you see a pin, freak out about it and say, I found a pin. Whose pin is this? It's not even worth a peruta. This is not enough value to be of note. Onward.
One who steals that which is worth a peruta from his fellow and swears falsely to him that he did not steal it must go after him to return it, even as far as Medea.
Okay, so if you steal a peruta's worth or more, that's theft. And if you swear, I didn't steal anything from you, Bob, and then eventually you do tshuva, you repent, and you say, actually, yeah, I did steal that. Bob is now living in Medea, in a faraway country. That's just a generic term for like far away. Go to him and give him back the peruta or more that you stole, because that's part of the mitzvah of when you have stolen is to return it to the person that you robbed.
But we didn't say that peruta was the smallest amount of money, the smallest coin, like insignificant like the penny.
Right.
So what can it be less than the penny of value?
So I steal a grape. It's not worth peruta. I mean, famously in the Talmud, in the Midrash, they talk about the people of the generation of the flood stealing a couple beans. Farmer, right? It's not worth anything. I mean, it's a couple beans. Even that wasn't even in the ancient world. It's a couple beans. Right? You steal just a little bit. That was certainly possible. But what they're trying to say here isn't that it's okay to steal a little. They're trying to say even if you steal almost nothing, you have to track him down till the ends of the earth to give it back, because that is what the mitzvah is. And don't steal. And it's a reminder that stealing even a little is still stealing. And as soon as you cross that threshold of stealing, you have to equally cross the threshold of returning. in order for this to work out. Okay. Sure. Yeah, we can continue with the fifths. This is another sort of list, almost like a mnemonic. That as long as we're doing some of this number game, we're just going to throw in a few more things to make it easy to remember. Isn't this easy?
There are 5 cases in which one must add a fifth. First, one who eats teruma, or the teruma taken from the tithe, or the teruma from a tithe taken from a doubtfully tithed produce, or dough offering or first fruits, must add a fifth to the value of the principal when he makes restitution.
Okay, I'm not going to explain all of these because there's a whole lot of Jewish law going on in just that one little sentence. But basically, there are different gifts or tithes. Gifts to the Kohanim, tithes that are going to be given to the Kohanim or the Levi'im or the poor. And those are considered to already be belonging to the recipient, even if you haven't given it to them yet. So if you use it, you are stealing from them. Does that make sense? Right? If I'm supposed to give this truma, this gift to the Kohen, and before I give it to him, I have a snack, I have stolen from the Kohen, even though he hasn't taken possession of it yet. By declaring it truma, it's now his. Same thing for same thing for the tithes, for the first fruit offerings, and other things. That's what this is talking about. You might have thought, hey, no one else owns it yet. No one's taken possession of it yet. So maybe, sure, I gotta, but why should I be given the penalty for theft, which was to add a fifth to what I took? And the answer is because it already belongs to them, you give a fifth. Next.
One who redeems the fruit of a 4th-year plant or his second tithe must add a fifth.
All right, so as you may know, when you plant a fruit tree, the first 3 years you can't eat the fruit. The 4th year you can redeem the value of the fruit and eat it in Jerusalem or in other places. And then in the 5th year you can finally eat it, right? Just straight, no problem, as regular food.
The 5th year that you have in the tree fruit, not the 5th year that you planted the tree.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm not much of a grower, but yes, I believe you're right.
No, because you can plant a tree 2-3 years, you don't receive any
Right,
fruit.
it's just a sapling.
So it's 3 years since the first time that you receive a fruit.
I believe you're right. I'd have to double check because the laws of Orla, the fruit that can't be eaten for the first 3 years, is not something I've ever had to worry about. I've never planted a fruit tree in my life. So it's always been just a hypothetical, or usually as part of a list like this.
And lemon tree, that's why. 3 years
Ah,
ago, this year. So
dun dun dun.
0 fruit, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's why I said that it's about the
But
year
I have
of
to,
the plant.
I'm not sure because
Yeah.
from what I remember learning about Tu B'Shvat, the reason,
To Bishvat 3 years ago.
well, but not all trees are planted on Tu B'Shvat.
No,
Right? That's why we have Tu B'Shvat, is so that all trees have the same birthday, even if they weren't. I mean, I remember that if a tree was planted a year before, or a day before Tu B'Shvat, on Tu B'Shvat, it's considered 1 year old. So I don't
Candy.
think you count from when it starts giving fruit. I think you count from when it's planted.
Yeah, and you can tell here that it's when it's planted, because if you look at number 2, it says of a 4th-year plant.
Mhm.
It's not talking about the 4th year, it's not talking about the 4th year, that it's
Just
it's
Right.
when it gave fruit.
Right. So I
So
think it's planted, but I can't be sure. So you know, it's as we say, bli neder, without vowing. I think it is, from what I remember of Tu B'Shvat laws, that it's from when you planted it, not from when it starts giving fruit. If you have more commentary there that gives you a different answer, that's always helpful.
I need to read this.
Okay, well we can double check that, and soon, because if you're a lemon tree,
Yeah, right.
we only have 2 years to go.
I haven't seen yet any lemon, anything.
Right.
But in theory, this Tu B'Shvat will be in the 3rd year.
This Tu B'Shvat will be the 3rd year.
Yes.
Okay. All right. 4.
One that derives a peruta's worth of benefit from that which belongs to the sanctuary must add a fifth when he makes restitution.
So this is sort of building on what we said in the last Mishnah, that if you use a pruta's worth, you have committed the crime. And now we know the punishment for the crime is you pay back what you used and you add in the fifth for restitution. And then 5.
One who steals that which is worth a peruta from his fellow must add a fifth when he makes restitution.
Right. So if you steal something, then you obviously have to make good on as well as the penalty on top of it. Okay, so like I said, that one we could bang out, not too bad, but we probably are going to want to hold off on the next page, because we're going to find out where it doesn't matter how much you call it, what something charge is for, where there is no possibility of fraud. That doesn't mean someone can't be charging more than you like, but you can't take them to court afterwards. So that'll be in Mishnah 9. We're also going to talk about when you defraud somebody in social situations, onah b'devarim, as opposed to onah b'mamon. When you defraud someone with money, it's different than defrauding them with words, not lying like defraud about business, but social interaction fraud. And then we'll wrap it up with a few more pieces, but we'll do that next week.
And where can we put these